able to go through and really make sure that you have all of those explanations down. I'm sure you'll all use different examples, different putting people in different accidents, things like that. There's a couple in particular that I want to unpack on how you explain it, because there's always questions. At least my clients always had questions on UM, and what I hear is really, you got to be specific to UM bodily injury. It doesn't say it on the deck page. It just says UM, right? So making sure that you verbalize that so the client understands it. And so really today, we're just going to go through some different, I'm going to call on you guys and have you explain a specific coverage to me, just to get an idea how you do it, right? Don't be scared and don't be hesitant. We're going to go through this. And the next time we're going to talk about closing the deal. Like, how do you get to that point where you make certain recommendations off of what you've seen, and really unpacking and making sure that it's not just, well, here's what I recommend. Because if the client ever asks you, well, why do you recommend that? You better have an answer, right? It's not just your opinion. Take your opinion off the table. How does the recommendation affect their goals, their situation? That's where trust is built, right? And so that the closing of the deal is so much easier when they trust you, that you're making recommendations based on what's good, the best for them. All right. And then number 6, we will get into organization. How do you handle your calendar? How do you prioritize important, urgent? Are you reacting to every email or phone call that comes in and kind of taking you off your game, right? Because you're like ADD. Oh, I got this, I got this, I got that. Your brain kind of goes to other things when you're working on one thing. How do you prevent that, right? How do you stay focused? And that's one thing. We'll grab my phone here real quick. I got a text yesterday from Cora Christ, and she's in Klamath Falls, one of our great agents down there. And she goes, I just thought of you with this, and I wanted to send it to you. I read this quote this morning and found it to be pretty profound. Time is not your greatest asset. Your focus is. Time passes no matter what. Your focus determines what happens as time passes. It's true. It is true. Yeah. So later on, she said that to me in the morning. So last night I said, so how was your focus today? Just, she thought of me. And I said, well, I want to follow up. And she said, much better. Got a life appointment set for tomorrow. Called a lead from a year ago and set an appointment. I'm like, yay. Congratulations. She asked me how mine was. And I said, well, I had 4 coaching sessions, so I had to be focused, Anyway. Well, let's kind of get started today. Before I start calling on you guys, is there any? I like some of you to unpack, like, when you transition into that business piece, like you've set, let's just say you've introduced the 3 pillars or however you do it, introduce the agenda, really set up the appointment, and then you transition into, okay, let's get started. What does that look like? What do you do at that point? What does getting started mean to you? And let's just assume that you're in front of a client who has an auto and a home policy. All right, just those 2, simple, right? What does that piece look like? Are you conscious with that transition, or do you just kind of let it play out the way it does? I'd like to hear from some of you.
Okay. I think on the home, the piece that I feel is the most important that I talk to them about first, I always ask for their declaration pages. And it's not because I'm going to quote apples to apples. I don't believe in that. So I can review it, so I have something to compare and speak to. So I always tell them, I'm not going to match the coverage that you have on here because I have no idea how this other agent arrived at that, $350,000 for your house. I want to talk to you about the details of your home so I can make sure there aren't any gaps in coverage and we insure it for the correct amount. We don't want to over-insure it, but we also don't want to under-insure it. And so this is why we're gonna go through that together. I have to start there. Like, I won't quote it if I can't get those details out of the gate, because otherwise I'm just wasting time assuming things that I'm gonna have to go back and I'm gonna have to change. You know, if you don't ask about the roof, if you don't ask what type of floors do you have, how much your house, you know, like, I wanna know all of that to build it. And I start with that because it's the main piece of your home, what your premium is based on.
So Nancy, let me ask you a question, and I'm gonna play, so this is really me kind of helping you, pushing back a little bit, just to get you to expand your thinking or reasoning for why you do it that way, right? So why do you feel you have to have the deck page for what they're currently, because what you just said was, I gotta make sure this is correct. I have to make sure, like, I'm gonna make recommendations based on my conversation with you and
Right.
what I uncovered, because I am the best in the business, right? So whatever you tell me, I'm gonna apply that to the recommendations that I make. So talk to me about why you would need a previous deck page in order to do so.
Well, I don't have to have it necessarily to build my quote. I ask for it because nobody knows what they have. And nobody,
Okay.
maybe you'll
Fair.
get 1 out of 10. So if I'm taking all this time to present you with a new proposal and you look at the premiums and this package that I built for you that's going to have your home, your auto, and your umbrella, how do you know if it's a good price? Because most people say my insurance is packaged in my loan. I don't know. I have no idea what I'm paying per year. They surely don't know how much liability they have. They don't know what their home is covered for. They might have gotten that policy. The only reason I tell them I want to have it is so I can help them compare and contrast where there's going to be differences and how much it is. Like, I'm informing them of how much they're currently paying because they don't know. They're not going to know.
That's it.
So that's why I ask for it. I should say I don't have to have it to do my part if they're willing to have a conversation. So I'm not going to just pull up their address on Zillow and try to pull something out of left field. I just don't work like that. I can't. I'm not going to do it that way. I'm not going to be like, well, let's just round up to about 500,000 for the house. No, not doing it. But I see it all the time. And if like this is grossly underinsured, like did they even, you know, or you look at if they're just letting the defaults go in, like 10 of them say they have a tile roof. It just defaults that they have a concrete tile roof. No, not in Oregon. You got to ask them about the roof and you've got to fix it, put it in. If you have a fireplace, you know, so you have to ask those things if you want to make sure it's detailed and people see the value that they took the time to take that time where they'll say, no one asked me that before.
Yeah.
Oh, I brought home my 3 Rottweilers and I breed them. You know, like, oh, they did it. Thanks for sharing. You know, like you find so much out because you just takes a half an hour to talk to yourself at home. Oh, did you ever let your other agent know? And now you can say, well, actually, the square footage on here is incorrect. You know, I see that all the time. So to me, quoting home is a little different than auto. You've got to be oriented. And I believe that. I think that's what sells you and the value of why they want to work with you. If you show them that you care about all those things. So, perfect.
I love it. Yeah. I always play devil's advocate because someone on the call may have a different perspective, and
Right.
I like to hear the reason why and share it with everyone, on why you do it that way, you know?
Yeah.
And it's great, you have this substantial evidence for the reason you do it, so I love it.
You take the guesswork out and even write it out for them and show them, you know, like this is why mine's more. I just sold it. It doesn't matter that it's more. I showed them mine and they love that. They're like, oh, that makes sense. I'm willing to pay more because she did X, Y, and Z and showed me where the differences are. They're not going to know that out of the gate. They're not going to know.
There's a spreadsheet that I shared with Jimmy, early on, when we were kind of going through some different prospects that he was quoting. And it was a spreadsheet I got from Jason Percha. He was a he's a very successful agent in Northern Colorado, and he uses it every time he does a review, or he gets a new prospect, I should say, because it's a whole spreadsheet he created that does comparison on every single coverage that they have. And so he does spreadsheet instead of the deck pages side by side. He just has it all in Excel, and it totals at the bottom. And whether it's more expensive or not, as he walks through, he highlights the different reasons why they should go with Country and him on the different specific coverages. So there's all sorts of different processes out there. Who else has that transition piece that they want to share how they do that?
For me, I like to start with auto when I'm doing that, just because like I feel like starting with the auto helps me set the tone of what I'm going for. Probably part of that's because it's the part I'm more confident on my verbiage on when I'm going over that with them, but because I try to structure it, talk about the auto, talk about the coverage where it's at, then I can lean into the home and the coverage where it's at, and then often use that to try to transition to just talking about umbrella insurance, the benefits of it. But also because I find kind of like how Nancy was saying, a lot of people don't know what they have on their coverage for their home insurance because it's all through their home loan. So many people I interact with genuinely have no clue on what auto insurance even really is or what it does, other than they have to pay it because their loan company and the government says they have to have it. So like by sitting there and kind of going over like the 3 points of coverage, your liability, your comprehensive, your collision, and just breaking that down and saying, hey, look, so I go into further detail if you need it, but these are the main parts of this, gives me the credibility to show that I know what I'm talking about. So we kind of like it just sets the tone so we can kind of breeze through the highlights and then go into detail on parts they need on both home auto and anything else we're talking about. But
so Jeremy, I have a question for you. When you have a client in front of brand new, new to you, you new to that, they've been in the country for a while, you inherited that client, and they sit in front of you and you say, you have your let's just pretend that you go through your setup and all of that, your transition to this piece. You get the liability, whether it be on the auto or the home, and then you mention setting up for an umbrella, right? So how do you cover? And it's not explain what liability is, but how do you ask them about your recommendation of, well, this is how much liability I recommend that you have. How do you set that up and explain that to a client?
for me, the way that I do it, because they look at the number, especially like it's like I have 300,000 on my own insurance. When is that ever going to come up? Stuff like that. Like that's a huge number. That's more than I made last year. Why would I need more than that? And I always try to put it in perspective of like assets and the scary reality of the lawsuit, right? And saying, look, if something happens, you want to make sure that the insurance is the only thing getting involved. Nobody's coming after your assets. And so you need to make sure that you have coverage, you can cover your assets so that they're not able to go after that for you. And that's kind of what I used to lean into it. So especially if somebody's a homeowner, especially if they have any kind of retirement account, saving account, stuff like that, if they've got a lot of toys, they're the kind of person who has 3 cars and they in a boat, it's like you want to say, hey, look, you've got a lot of expense. You don't want to lose them because you didn't look over your shoulder when you turned left, and just like putting that in the perspective of this is so you don't have to worry about it. It's all about peace of mind. And for that peace of mind, that's something we could look at $300 a month, $300 care for. And that's kind of how I move around that.
So how do you know what to recommend? Like, what do you specifically ask them? Like, how do you ask them? Do you directly say, hey, how much is your annual income? And what are we protecting? What do you have in retirement? What do you have in savings? I need those numbers in order to make this recommendation. Or you ask them, hey,
yeah, I based it off of like if they still have mortgage on the home and where that kind of thing is, how much value they have in the home. And I'll go over the details of that with them saying like, hey, look, so you said you're just barely starting on your mortgage, so the bank owns a lot more of it than you do. You don't have as much credit there, but you let me know, ideally by this point, we will have also kind of talked, if I'm presenting quotes to them, we'll have talked about what I am insuring for them, essentially. So I'll ask them about, hey, and it usually is part of my initial pitch when I'm getting information for the
Yeah.
quotes. So I'm like, hey, by the way, a lot of people don't know this because they just think of their insurance guy as, you know, home and auto and then whatever. But I also do life. I work with somebody who does, so I do all of these sorts of things. So I like to know what I'm protecting for my clients. And I kind of gather that information as part of the quote gathering process. So like, okay, so this might just be your auto insurance, but it kind of protects all your stuff. So I want to know what we're protecting. And ideally, that's an post already had in front of me before I started the quotes.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how I build that based off of that. Now, also a lot of the times with the folks I'm working with, it doesn't seem quite as necessary for umbrella, just because, especially at opposite side, I default to $1 personal liability in the home insurance policy anyway, just out of the gate. And then we'll pro cons out with them. But my whole setup for all of that though is I just want to protect the information, tell you what it is I offer, why it is I offer it, and then let them make a decision based on that. But yeah, that's ideally I've already kind of done some of the math, the background before I'm setting with them. I'm not doing that actively with them right in front of them. And I can just kind of say, here's this, here's that, here's what.
Okay. And I think that's the main key, is there's several different approaches. I think the one kingdom that has a lot of agents across my time working with them is asking about assets and income. Like they're hesitant about it. And I said, like, you've got to have the confidence, like you're an advisor. Why, how can you advise the client if you don't know what you're protecting? Like you can't just say, most of my clients, choose 300,000. Well, why? You know, like why do they only do 300? Like how does that be as detailed as possible? Because you're gonna stand out. Your competition are lead buyers, you know, the other farmers, State Farm, and they're just, it is just about hurting the people in, you know, they don't care about those questions. They honestly don't. So you stand out when you say, well, why do you have this? You know, like here's what this does. Here's what it protects. Here's what I would recommend based on what you told me. You know, so that's one thing I see as, hey, let's overcome that. Have the confidence. I don't know if any of you deal with that, but have the confidence of asking, and you know, but how much money you make each year. You know, should something happen, the state can garnish your wages. We don't want that to happen. It's just what Jared said. We want them to look at the insurance. You know, the attorney that they would hire if you caused injury, want them to look at the insurance, not your assets. So that's what this covers.
But even if they're young and they don't own a house, they have earning potential of 40, 50 years ahead of them. So don't only think of it as people that have a bunch of assets. Think of it as pretty much everyone out there. It's high risk. There's distracted drivers. Like there's people driving around without insurance. So, you know, it just, to me, just offer it on every single person. And then even if they've never heard of it, a 25-year-old probably never heard of it, but you can explain it. And then you planted the seed for later. You know, I didn't have one until my boys started driving. I had 3 teenage boys. I thought, well, gee, odds are against me there, you know. If something happens, we're going to lose everything if they go and do something stupid. So I didn't see the value for quite a while. We were in our 20s. We owned a home, but we didn't have one. No one ever spoke to me about it. And I was with USAA. And they're supposed to be pretty good, but no one ever tried to sell me one. But also, like in a review, jot down on your notepad, what's the premium difference if you guys rate the house with 300,000, 500,000, and $1 million? I tell people sometimes like it's $12, $14. Why wouldn't I give you another 200,000? You know, for $1 more a month? Like, but you know that when you come into it, whether you're selling it or you're reviewing it. I like to just show them and here's the options and what are they comfortable with. Everyone's different, but don't ask them what they would want, like show them the differences. Because to me, maybe $13 is no big deal, but someone else is like, well, I don't want to do that. I want to add that to it. I don't want to increase the premium. All right, well then we'll leave it at 300,000. But at least I presented it. Here's your 3 options. You know, I'm not going to write it below 300, but here's the options and let them choose. You know, you've done your job. You've explained it. So
Coach, when we get in, hold it.
Just to have that in your pocket, like I know how much it'll be. And I could just mention that.
Good idea.
A lot of carriers won't go above 500,000, but then that's another selling point, like, we'll do 1 million, not too many, you know, just have that. Versus the umbrella is a little more expensive.
Nancy, you bring up a great point with the 3 teenage drivers, right? And I know Jimmy and Jeremy both have heard me say this over and over, that your most litigious time of your life is when you have teenagers in the home. All right, so if you come across any clients that have teenagers, just the fact that they have them is a reason to recommend an umbrella. I mean, you don't even have to show that you're covering any assets, like, it's just, you know.
Right.
It's your risk.
Just, that's your risk right there. Yeah.
Yeah.
And everything else is icing on the cake, but that's, there's your exposure right there.
Yeah.
It's that first driver they even, I can't tell you, I got 2 just this year that already, their 16-year-old daughters got put on. They already each have an accident. I was like, oh my gosh, they're gonna hate us next year at renewal, but it's just the way it goes. They're both at fault. They both got into an accident. I'm lucky, mine only got speeding ticket, no accident, but they all had speeding tickets. But they were NASCAR drivers.
I did my first speeding ticket, I was 16. And
Me too.
I've
I
only gotten one since then.
have my share as well.
I mean, I look at my driver IQ, I'm like 20,000 in speeding. So I'm way down there, halfway to everyone that has driver IQ. I wonder who the number 1 person is, like, who is that? Where are they from?
My husband got 23%. I've never had someone get 25, but he was at a steady 23%. And my son was at 1%. So that should speak volumes. So he's got 1%. I was like, you're off my college. Move out. Then he moved out. Like, I took him off. So I was like, you're terrible.
That's hilarious. All right, what is, who wants to share kind of, a unique way to explain UMUIN to a client? Devin, how do you do that?
I bring it up when I start to go over the initial liability limits. I mean, first, like I was quoting out a customer yesterday, or a potential customer, and I think he had 25, and he's buying his first home. So I mean, I just kind of asked, hey, is that really, do you really have a 25-50 policy? Just it's our first line of defense. And then, I mean, I find out a little bit more about the person. Right now, he's a sole income earner. They're transitioning over to Oregon. His wife's going to be looking for a job here, but especially if I get somebody into that preferred network and I can really see their loss history, I just kind of break it down like, hey, these liability limits are a double-edged sword. They're going to be the first line of defense in case we're at fault for an accident. At that point, I usually break down PIP to Oregon's a state where PIP is a requirement. Anybody that you get in an accident with that has valid insurance is going to have $15,000 worth of medical treatment that they'll be able to seek. This policy that you have is $25.50. That $15,000 goes like that. Then we need to cover the person's pain and suffering, any outstanding medical bills that were above that, any missed wages that they have. And by increasing those limits, we're also going to be protecting you as well. I see your driving record. I know that you've had no losses for the last 5 years, and maybe for you, a 25-50 or a 50-100 policy, it fits within your risk tolerance because, as your record shows, you're actually a really safe, responsible driver. But do we really want to take that chance and also rely on the other drivers that are out there on the road? The number of drivers that are driving uninsured or underinsured is consistently going up. And if we're at a complete stop, at a stoplight, and we get rear-ended by somebody that carries these state minimum policies where they just don't have enough insurance, what type of position do we want to be in? We just reviewed, you're the sole income earner of your household right now. If there's an accident and this person doesn't carry auto insurance at all, are you going to need protection for the missed wages? That's the only check that's coming in every month for you and your family. What about the pain and suffering? You're not able to live the same life, or there's some pain and suffering that goes on while we get you back to that pre-loss condition. And we also need to cover those outstanding medical bills. So that's normally how I break it down. I transition immediately from the liability to the UIM. I compliment them on how safe they are as a driver. You're in our preferred network, so we're putting you in our top tier pricing because we consider you the best risk. But part of my job too is to make sure if we're not at fault and somebody else is, we really want to rely on them carrying sufficient enough limits in order to take care of us.
Yeah, no, that's great. That's great. So if I were your client and I said, so all right, it's bodily injury protection for me if somebody rams into me and causes me injury while I'm in a car. Is there any other situation where UIM covers me if I'm not in a car?
Oh, if you're a pedestrian and you get hit, let's say you're going through the crosswalk and you get hit by another person. Let's just say it's entering and exiting your auto. Well, I guess the UIM wouldn't really apply there, but yeah, I mean, it'll cover you if you're a pedestrian and you end up getting hit. That's a serious loss. Someone's carrying 25, 50 isn't going to make you whole. It's certainly not going to cover your missed wages. And do we really want this $15,000 MRI bill hanging over our heads for something that wasn't our fault? We're already paying, if we're looking at coverage to cover if we're at fault, don't you want to cover you and your family too with passengers that are in your vehicle?
Yeah. So it's pedestrian, just for those that don't know this, pedestrian, it's if you're riding a bike. I mean, how many of those do you see around Bend, right? I mean, they're good place. I mean, I've been always eagle-eyed when I'm, going through the roundabouts with, especially in the morning going to the office. It's crazy. So on the bike, if you or any of your family, even if they're not named insured on the policy, if they're a passenger in another vehicle and they get in an accident and it's underinsured situation, I mean, talk about teenagers. How many times have you asked your teenager, hey, before you get your friend's car, make sure, ask them what coverage they have. No one does that. Nobody does that. That's your responsibility as a parent to make sure that you're covering your assets. What assets will be drained because you have your child was in their friend's car and got in an accident? I mean, it's filters out into so many different things. So when I was an AFib, I described it as like it's a cape or a blanket that follows you. It's invisible. It's on you all the time, protecting you when you are in a car, outside of a car, riding a bike, as a pedestrian, and any sort of auto injures you, no matter what the situation, right? And that's kind of how that works. It's like, oh wow, I didn't realize. So many of them are like, I didn't realize how comprehensive that coverage actually is.
My friend's daughter got hit in the crosswalk at RCC in Medford, and we couldn't figure out why Progressive wasn't paying it and being a pain in the what. And I called claims and they said, well, we got to the bottom of it. She wasn't insured. Her policy canceled due to non-payment, and so that's why there was no coverage. So she was uninsured. Hit. So Country paid, or she was okay, but she was going slow, but still, she did go to have an X-ray and some things at the hospital. So Country paid it under UIM, yeah. So I was thankful to represent a company that they took good care of them. But that can happen. It could have been way worse.
Yeah. These are just this, hopefully you're taking that knowledge of, okay, how do I create word pictures for my client and really get them to understand the importance of this and what it does in whatever situation they find themselves in. They have confidence that their assets will be protected. Right, because they're one of your clients. So it's just, it gives you more credibility and it creates trust with your clients when you explain specifically, hey, this is how this works. Let me give you an example, and the one Nancy the example you gave, steal it, everyone, hey, we have a country client who was in a crosswalk and, you know, so there's, I have, when I was an agent in Vegas, what they, at that time, they had like district underwriters where, it was Fatima was her name, and you might come across her in commercial underwriting. But she was specific to our area, so she would send us real claims examples. And I'm sure, Devin, you have tons of those, you know, that you might have worked, but, the examples were, these were true country claims that paid out, and she would every quarter give us, hey, here's umbrella, here's home, here's auto, and it was just a reminder of this crap happens. Like, this is crazy. Some of them were crazy, you know, like somebody had a pit bull and, you know, the arm of a child was chewed off and like, oh my gosh, you know? So, and then she would say, here's the coverage that was affected and here's why it's important to make sure you have this conversation because this could happen. So, it's so helpful, to get those. We don't have those anymore, but I have them.
You could look them up online. There's some crazy umbrella ones, the payouts are like 10 million, and then you're like, how much is enough? Is it 2 million, 5 million, even in that same state? I mean, some of them are crazy lawsuits that are huge payouts that
Yeah.
hard to protect people from.
But that's what we do, right? That's what we have these conversations. So it's just making sure that this piece of it, the meat of the appointment, the meat of showing that you're credible, that you're an expert. It's not like right now, you know, especially for Jimmy and Jeremy, and Matt, having just kind of at the beginning of the career with that, like have it go in with confidence. And even if they ask you a question you don't know, say, hey, you know what, great question. I'm gonna get back to you on that. I wanna make sure I'm correct. I have an idea of what that is, but I don't wanna mislead you. So it just come across with confidence in the fact that you look into that information. And then you look it up and you give it to them and you'll never forget it again. You know, so you wanna put yourself in those positions where you have to learn something. You know, you won't know everything at the beginning. But the more appointments you have, the more questions are asked, and you're like, okay, I got that one now. You know, so what does this conversation bring up any questions or situations that you found yourself in that you're like, Christine, how would you answer this one? Does anyone have one of those for me?
I ended up having one, what was it, Monday, customer wanted a IFR, and then I did it here in Oceanside and talked to him about all the coverages, and he's like, yeah, I want to make sure my auto is, I have renters coverage or renters on his auto policy because he had a mechanic that ended up overfilling the oil and whatever and totaled the vehicle, and he's like, yeah, I need to get a rental. I was like, country doesn't cover mechanical failure on that. I was all, so well, I still need, I was like, we can add it, but it's not gonna, you're gonna have to pay out of pocket for that. Because I wanted to, thanks to Nancy, I called underwriter, said, hey, how do I handle this? What are the things on here? And they explained more in detail for me to explain that. And I was like, I can take this, remove this stuff. And he's like, yep. And going through court, and I was like, well, you speak to an attorney. I can't give you advice on that. I was all, but we can help you in regards to your coverages on here. So he's like, well, I need to lower this amount. And then when I found that out, that's when I have more IT issues on the pass system. So I was like, oh, are you kidding me? But that was, what's that?
Did you file that would be a covered comp loss? If you went to a service tech and if they took out your drain plug and all the oil came out, if there was some sort of error, like if they overfilled it and caused some sort of mechanical issue with it, that would be a sudden and direct loss. That would be considered like wear and tear or mechanical failure.
Even if it was done by a third party?
Yeah, definitely. You can file that under, like, let's say I go to, I don't know, Jiffy Lube, and those guys don't put the plug in, or let's say they put coolant inside my oil or do something like that. Now, it should be the responsibility of that company to step up, file the claim, do that, but when you're dealing with those business policies with a company like that, sometimes it takes a little bit to get it done, and you want to have a claim filed in-house so we could do our own causation investigation. Because there's gonna be a difference between wear and tear. Hey, I didn't change my oil, 4,000, 5,000 miles on mechanical, all the protected properties inside of that oil deteriorated, and so it caused damage over time. As opposed to, no, I went to this location that specializes in this. I had them do an oil change, and due to their oversight or incorrect process or whatever, they caused this damage. Because I've handled tons of claims like that where, yeah, they just didn't put the oil plug back in, or they overfilled it, or maybe put the wrong stuff in there. And yeah, we put that customer in a rental. We did a causation investigation. If we ended up paying out on it, then we subrogated against the mechanic or the oil company. Just because wear and tear is going to be things, sudden and direct is what you're looking for. So that was an operating auto that had, no issues going in, and we were just getting a standard oil change. Something happened there that was sudden and direct that caused mechanical damages to the vehicle. And I mean, you could go to Jiffy Lube and you can do that. I mean, but it's just, I had good luck with filing the claim in-house. That way we did our own causation investigation. That way we were preserving the evidence.
So this customer canceled his auto policy because he's all, it's not drivable, so I'm not going to pay for it. And he has an attorney involved on there that's going after them. How would you handle that? Like, should I?
Oh yeah, if he had comp coverage, then I mean, that'd be considered comprehensive loss. And if he did have rental on his policy, I mean, if it turns out that, no, this engine was just crap and they did nothing wrong, then we would ultimately deny the claim. But most insurance companies that I've worked with or worked for, while they're doing that causation investigation, they will afford a rental if it's on the policy while they look into it.
Okay,
Perfect.
thank you. Holy moly.
Yeah, thanks, Devin. Like, I didn't know that. I had no idea. I told Jimmy immediately, no, that's mechanic, no,
Yeah,
we don't
that's-
cover, something like that because their car is broken down.
Yeah, no, I mean, wear and tear and sudden endurance.
Yeah.
So,
Makes sense. Sudden and direct is the key phrase, right? Oh, I love it. Thank you.
there's something
Yeah,
I learned new
Yeah.
from you. Thank you, Devin. Thanks for not holding back on that.
Thank you.
No.
Oh, no, it's just, I mean, because that's one of the things that, I don't know, I had to go through it in order to figure it out, so I mean,
Right.
I'm not pulling that off the top of my head.
Oh.
No.
But
So we believe you.
Yeah.
Hey, do you have any other
I just try to speak with the board, Thank you.
Yep. You sold me on that.
Well, that way they feel too that you're, you're looking into it for them too. I mean, you never want to you want to under promise, over deliver. But I mean, if they carry comp coverage and there's no issues with that vehicle prior to bringing it in there, and it sounds like we already determined that they overfilled it or did some to it. I'd say that's worth processing. And I try to prevent claims on the customer's policy as much as possible, especially if you've gone over it. Hey, this other person's at fault, you're not injured, there's no need to file a PIP claim. It's just some stuff like this. It can be a real pain in the butt working with Jiffy Lube Direct. And at times I'd rather have the insurance, especially because something like that would be considered no fault. Sometimes it's just easier to have your carrier pay out and then pursue the other party, which I think kind of ties into the UIN thing. Listen, do you want to send this guy to small claims court? Do you want to go out of pocket $20,000 in medical bills and then go after this person that didn't carry insurance? Let us do that on your behalf, but also be conscious about your loss ratios too.
Yes.
So another question, since he had canceled, he wanted the car removed from his policy. Does that still, I mean, the policy is now canceled.
Well, if we canceled it too and he's in a rent, then, I mean, hey, we gotta keep this thing active while you're in a rental.
Okay.
And then if it's you know what I mean, because you gotta keep
'Cause-
it insured while you're driving that, and if it is determined that, hey, on this date, the vehicle was rendered a total loss, then we'll backdate the policy to that date, or they should, or
Okay.
something we can look at too, and basically remove that vehicle. Or if they have multiple vehicles, I don't know, put it on a comp only policy or. Dude, listen, man, sure, well, this we can look into this thing.
Yeah,
Plus, insurance.
Rosie, come.
See what you said. So you really want to have lapse in coverage.
no,
No.
No.
Tickets or claims or anything during that time. It helps if you don't have a car. If you know you're planning on getting another car in the next 6 months, it's often still going to be cheaper for you to maintain insurance coverage for those 6 months, even without a car, than to not take the coverage and bite the bullet of the huge spike in premiums. Because like with country, that would stick you to mutual instead of preferred, and that's a big difference in rates. So
Now, does Country have I don't think Country has an operators only policy. Like, I want to say I hit this once with a customer, where, hey, I had a mechanic, or I've sold the vehicle, I'm getting rid of it. So I'm gonna be, there's not gonna be a need for me to carry auto insurance. I want to say that I've had a conversation with underwriting. They've notated the file, and then when they purchased that new vehicle in 3 weeks, they reinstated that same policy. But I don't think that's anything you just click in Navigator to.
No.
I did a conversation with underwriting just to make sure that this person in 3 weeks wasn't gonna be like exactly placed in mutual or something.
and I assume that's pretty case by case too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Jimmy, with that process, I would call underwriting, right, and say, hey, here's what I'm gonna possibly instruct my client, here's an option. I wanna make sure, what's that look like if we need to reinstate that policy back to the date that we canceled it and change that to liability only, right, to comp only? What would that process look like? Just so you know, when you talk to the client, hey, here's your options. What do you want to decide? Which path do you want to go down? You know how to meet them with that.
right.
With that.
They have to sign a form too, right? I had one, they had like 5 cars and 2 were kind of broken down or sitting, so we did. They took off the physical damage, but made them sign something saying this is not.
Yeah, gotta list out the VIN, put your make and model, put your information behind it. Oh, like your signature in it, and I wanna say you can only have, like, you have to have an active liability policy on at least one vehicle. I don't know if that's something that they'll make an exception for, like, hey, I just had my own
Yeah.
Honda Element. It's in op right now. But I wanna say that's something that I ran into, is like, no, we have to have liability on at least one auto. So
Yeah.
Find out. No, it's great. Yeah, good information.
So here's the problem that I have, Christine. They're in legacy and he has an old policy and then he has a new policy. And that's where I was trying to be with underwriting to fix that. And they didn't change any of that policy. It was on there and I couldn't have access. They don't have access. So I'm like, and it was 4 hours on the phone and absolutely not, just going in circles. And I was like, you know what? This is just like, I mean, yeah, and I got transferred. So he has a legacy policy. He has a legacy policy, and then he's on a newer policy. I could not switch to just comp on his legacy policy because the system was locked up, and I have to rewrite everything as a new policy. And I was like, okay, well, do I rewrite the new policy? Do I cancel out his other policies? Do I rewrite them first?
That.
Yeah.
System, they have to be on the new pause to do comp only.
So would I
So-
write a new policy and then cancel his other policies after these are written?
they could just add an additional auto to the newer system, and then would you process a cancellation on the old system? So I mean, it's just, by new policy, you probably meant adding an additional vehicle to the existing, I think that's what you do.
Yeah, well, that's the thing, that they couldn't even do any of that on their system.
Oh, so it doesn't give you the ability to make changes to it.
And here was
Yeah.
exactly what you said, Nancy. I have to send them a form for him to sign that we're just going to comp only for that.
And I believe
Yep.
that's on mine, like, it won't let you do it, you have to call underwriting, make sure you call underwriting in the new system to talk to them.
That was 2 hours with underwriting on the new and 2 hours with the old system. And I'm like, you gotta be kidding me. Like, I was just so over that where I still could not do anything. And
Well, I think you have to write a new policy. You have to do a new policy in the old system. Like, let's say I have somebody in the old system where I have 3 vehicles and they go, hey, Devin, I want to change that '04 Honda Element over to a comp only policy, just meaning there's no liability
Right.
insurance on it. I have to delete it from that existing old system and I gotta write a new policy and they
But
gotta
in the
sign a
old
new app.
system, you
Yeah.
have to do it through the old system, so it's such a pain, it's not a good workaround. Trying to think what else you could do, cause you have to,
well, I was on the phone with underwriting and I was like, hey, guide me the steps. What do I need to do on my end? And they're like, oh, well, it's locked up on their end too. And I was like, I mean, how is this locked up? Because if they're going through all the new changes. No,
was this yesterday?
this was Monday.
Yeah, there were some issues with Navigator Monday where it was just, mine was just spinning and blocked it, like it just wasn't working and we restarted it, tried to, underwriting deals with the same things when we're having issues. They have the same issues, it seems.
And then there was 4 hours yesterday as well, like on top of the same thing, like, man, where I just wanted to make 2 changes or 3 on his policy. His trailer, he just wanted to just go to comp, and his Can-Am, he just wanted to go to comp. And I was like, and I was on another agent, guided me through and we went through the whole system, and then all of a sudden it said at the end, oh, we have to, he's all, you gotta call underwriting because it won't allow you to make these changes.
Sometimes it's good to call them right when they open, the wait time list. I'll call from my cell phone while I'm driving, or, like, I just try to, like, call, Mike taught me that, to say, call on your cell phone and then be calling on here, be waiting, getting that one going if you're doing something quick, so like you try to work it, so it to your advantage, so it doesn't take so long, or so you can work on something else while you're on hold waiting.
The sad thing is they were working on it. I wasn't on hold. We were working through the system. Yeah, and that was where it was like, oh, let me try this, let me try this, and then I was on there. I figured
It should still be in there in the whip, so sometimes like if you have an issue like that, you have to wait till the next day, go back in,
Right.
and then like usually it works itself out, then you can push it through. But have you tried that to go back in?
not yet,
Release it?
not today.
Okay.
I'm kind of
Okay.
When I've called 866 Country to do the exact thing, as opposed to waiting for an underwriter, I just call 866 Country. I say, hey, I need to get this new vehicle on a comp only policy. They do it as a whip, and then I'm just basically going in there and releasing it.
that's what I did, and they were the
Oh,
ones that
really?
referred me to them. So I was like, oh man, like all these steps, like yeah. Oh
Abuse every way.
man.
That really sounds like you drew the short straw there, man. That's
Bad one. They're not all that bad, Jimmy, we promise.
I don't know. I'm glad you guys are laughing. I'm not. I'm over here. I need a box of tissue, man. I mean, this is like I'm ready to throw this computer.
Or in the middle of conversion, in the middle of renewal, right? So it's like all those things that can happen. And you're just like, the client doesn't care. They don't know. that that's what they
Right.
want. Yeah.
And he said
So,
he had called in and he was tired of waiting on for 20 minutes. I was like, okay, well, I will call in, and I extended that wait time.
I'll wait.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else? Gosh.
All right. We're at 10:02. So I appreciate you guys being on our